I'm very excited today to be joined by Saumil Mehta, the former Chief Product Officer at Square. We're going to talk about his career journey from product manager to founder to CPO, talk about product decisions at scale and building and leading teams today. So thank you for being here.
Great to be with you. Thank you for making time. Excited to be with you all.
Awesome. Why don't we get started by walking through your career journey and how you ultimately got to Square?
Yeah, so I'm going to date myself a little bit, but came to Silicon Valley in 2003, went to Stanford, and basically just never looked back. Started out as a software engineer at a crypto company when crypto meant doing email encryption for regulated industries and not, buying and selling coins. Um, so started out doing that. I realized after a couple of years that I didn't have a shot at professional greatness as a software engineer. And this is the beauty of Silicon Valley because you get to work with some of the best engineers in the world, and you figure out how to play to your strengths over time. So that led me to realizing that I had enough of a technical bent, but also enough kind of intellectual curiosity about everything surrounding software engineering that a PM role could be effective. Had no experience, obviously, doing any of this. And so hustled my way into a PM job with no PM experience, which I think is a common experience for most first-time PMs. They just find their way into the role and somebody takes a bet on them. And so a startup took a bet on me in 2007. That, after 4 years, led to starting my own company. And that, after 4 years of running and building that company, led to an acquisition by Square. That in turn led to a bunch of GM roles over expanding scopes over the years. And that over time led to a CPO role when we um, eliminated the GM structure and moved to a functional structure at Square. So no kind of crazy secrets, just one thing building upon another.
I want to break that down a little bit. So, starting from your product manager role into becoming a founder, what was that transition like? And was there a moment where you really knew the time is right? I want to become a founder now?
Yeah. So I think this is true for most founders, or many founders. They have kind of this like inbuilt inkling to go out and do something at some point. And frequently, many founders, especially if you've had a few years of industry experience, they just kind of stand on the precipice for a while and try to figure out when and how and if to take the leap. And so that was kind of my version of the story. I came from a family of small business owners and entrepreneurs at every step of the family tree, going back multiple generations on both sides of the family. It was all small business owners, and almost nobody was gainfully employed in a job. And so it was almost kind of preordained that at some point you actually have to try, which is a very unique privilege because founders come from all backgrounds. But certainly I was primed to do that very early. I think the second big thing for me was going to Stanford, which I think most people know is kind of a what I would jokingly call a startup brainwashing factory, because you go in there and every day you get a chance to meet another founder, or you hear about these amazing companies that were started, right out of Stanford. When I first got there, Google hadn't even IPO'd. It was that long ago. But everybody on campus was talking about how the Google founders had done something amazing coming out of Stanford a few years earlier. So I think that was, I think, the second part of the story. And I think the third part of the story is working at startups by itself as an employee is extremely clarifying and reinforcing. So for me, the way I got to the precipice was through family background in Stanford, and the way I got over the precipice is by actually working at amazing startups and having the privilege of being around and reporting to great founders a few times over. And that is extremely valuable, which I highly recommend for a lot of people who want to be founders eventually, because you get to see founders with clarity of vision, decision making prowess, risk taking abilities, mental resilience, emotional resilience. But you also see them being very human. You see them making dumb mistakes. You see them listening badly. You see them stumbling from time to time. And that tells you that they are all too human. And that can convince you that you can do it yourself. And so it was those three elements for me.
That's amazing. While you were at these startups, were there any skill sets that you were developing that proved to be extremely valuable when you became a founder?
Yeah, so I worked, at two or three different startups, engineer, product manager, um, and I think there was a series of things that I learned, especially as a PM, that helped me a lot. Um, I think maybe the number one would be kind of curiosity, which, I mean, we can get into AI and product and PMs. I think that isn't going to go away, because in a world of infinite answers, I think there is a premium on good questions.
Mm.
And good questions come from being innately curious about the world around you. When you work in a startup, curiosity is usually rewarded. If you work in a big, staid, extremely hierarchical company culture, curiosity is not always rewarded. Whereas if you're in a startup, you can learn about any function in the company just by being curious and walking around and talking to people. So you can be a PM, but you can learn a lot about sales. You can learn a lot about marketing. You can obviously learn a lot about engineering. You can also learn a lot about being a founder, both through osmosis and through explicit curiosity. So number one, I would say, is curiosity. I always had a lot of it, but that was fed a lot by being in multiple startups. That helped me a lot as a founder. So that's one. Two, if you're a PM, to be a good PM, you actually have to become very good at storytelling. Um, any great startup is going to elevate engineering and design. They're not going to treat them as vendors for features. Most great startups correctly elevate engineering and design, but that means that as a PM, if you want to rally them to your cause, you have to be able to tell a great story that is grounded in emotion and in facts, both. Um, and you have to win them over to your side through the merits of your arguments. So I think that is very valuable, because storytelling is something you do every hour of every day as a startup founder, whether it's with investors, candidates, employees, prospective customers. You're storytelling every day. So I think that's number two. Um, and maybe number three, again, you learn this as a product manager, and you also learn this as a startup employee, because you are forced to really work backwards from the needs of the customer in a given market. When the market is moving super fast and the customer is moving super fast and the startup is moving super fast, if you can't work backwards from the customer's needs, the startup, only a matter of time before it implodes. That is less the case in a big company. A big company can invest very patiently and throw good money after bad for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. Um, Alternatively, a good company can just ride the tailwinds of their prior success for many years. And so if you work in a startup, you really kind of, at a very crystal clear level, know how to work backwards from a customer's needs. And you may also see a startup failing when it can't do that successfully, which is also a valuable lesson to learn. Both the success and the failure, you learn in a very sharp way in a startup. All of these things help as a founder.
I think a big question on product managers and product teams' minds is
Yeah.
how do you balance the tension between short-term execution and then longer-term vision?
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things I learned is to really try to identify three dimensions. So, vision, strategy, tactics. A lot of teams, a lot of companies even confuse the three and treat them kind of in a blur. And it's valuable if you could separate the three. So, vision is kind of your long term orientation. In some ways, it's relatively easy to come up with a long term vision. You can communicate that in one sentence or less. Then there's tactics, which is short term, and some companies would define that at 2 weeks. Some companies would define that at 3 months. That's also relatively easy, because a good junior PM should be able to produce a good tactical roadmap. The way you clarify that tension, the way you articulate it, the way you navigate it, is by way of strategy, which sits in the middle. So strategy is hard, and the reason it's hard is because it forces you to ensure that your tactics are actually laddering up to something strategic, which in turn is serving your vision. So the best way that I've found to do this is to actually A, separate vision, strategy, tactics, B, recognize that the three of them are on different time cadences, C, communicate all three, and D, take a defined cadence to review, articulate, and when necessary, refresh strategy. So strategy is where you're going to say, here's where we are, like from good strategy, bad strategy. This is the kernel of our situation. These are our strengths and weaknesses in the market. These are the technology transformations that are taking place in our industry as we speak. This is where competitors are. And this is where we need to head in order to be true to our vision. Then you should be able to articulate the things that you want to do more of, and just as importantly, if not more importantly, the things you want to do less of or not at all. And that's how you actually balance between long-term vision and short-term tactics. So I heard somebody say years ago that, uh, you know, it's like achieving a vision is like flying from LA or San Francisco to New York, and strategy is the small but many course corrections you make along the way, um, to basically arc your way to achieving your vision. Another way, that Amazon has said this in the past is we are stubborn on vision, flexible on details, and so strategy helps you actually do that. That's how you navigate that tension.
I think another question that a lot of people are grappling with right now, especially with the rapidly advancing technology, is the other tension between product innovation and sticking to your core strengths and getting really good at those and protecting them. So, how do you think about that?
Yeah, yeah. There's no great answers because all companies kind of live with this pendulum, and there were times at Square when kind of the flavor du jour was more focused, do less, do less, do less. And then there was also times when the flavor du jour was, we can't stick to our knitting. We have to expand into adjacencies. We have to find more stuff to serve our customers. We have to find adjacencies. And so there's no perfect answer, um, but there's a few kind of things that can help. One is having good strategy, because again, that gives you clarification on your strategic themes. So the strategic themes help amplify parts of the core product and also parts of the places where you are willing to engage in expansion. So that's one. Um, Two is investment frameworks. So Three Horizons is a popular one, right? 70% goes to the core product, 20% goes to medium term kind of new expansions, 10% goes to purely speculative things that may not pay off for many years, may not pay off ever. So that can help. And the reason investment frameworks are valuable is because in any good company with a good core product, the core product will consistently demand 120% of time, attention, capital, as they should, because it's the core product. It's frequently the moneymaker. It's what the brand equity is attached to. So left to its own devices, the core product will always consume 120%. There are times when that is appropriate, and there are also times when you have to say, listen, I get it, but I have to ring fence some percentage of my capital, my bandwidth, in order to take on expansion. And an investment framework can help you do that. The other tactic that can help is org design, actually. So org design can be a very strategic lever to help you engage in strategic expansion. So one thing that Square did very early on, and some people thought at the time it was almost too early, is to actually go from a functional model to a GM model. And part of the rationale for doing that was to ring fence headcount in the organization of a GM, a single threaded leader, that would actually pursue adjacencies to the core product. Because again, if you don't have that type of org design, it is all too easy to basically do 120% of the core thing, because the core thing is very important. And again, it can very easily consume 120%. The final thing I would say, also balancing between innovation and core execution, is to have good kind of opportunities for creative exploration. Hack weeks are one way to do that. There are other ways to do it. But hack weeks can be very successful. Square deployed them very successfully for years. And the rules with Hack Week are, have them, first of all. Second of all, do them repeatedly. Don't just treat it as a one-off. Um, Three, encourage everybody to participate because good ideas can come from anywhere. Four, and this one is maybe a bit more controversial, is have some sort of context prompting for the team to basically give very, very loose, but some guardrails on exploration. Because the thing we learned at Square, and this is true in lots of other companies, is that the innovation that tends to be the most successful is the one that is one or two adjacencies away from the core product. Because that's how you get the flywheel effect. You take the core product, the strengths of the core product build upon itself and yield opportunities to sell an adjacency to a customer. But what that precise adjacency is, how it manifests, how it should be designed, built, rolled out, is not always clear to most people, including leaders. And that can come bottoms up. That type of innovation and ideation can come bottoms up in a very successful way. And so having good hack weeks that produce innovation in a bottoms up way with very loose kind of context prompt style guardrails can be very, very helpful.
Related to innovation and the rapid technological advancement, do you think that the product manager's role generally will change over time as we see, you know, AI and technology advance over time?
Almost certainly. Almost certainly. It already is. Um, there's a lot to say on this topic. So I mean, first of all, I don't believe that the PM role is going away. And there's some kind of commentary out there, fringe commentary maybe, that thinks that you don't need PMs anymore. Um, Now, maybe you in your particular company do not need PMs, but you need somebody doing some of the core functions that separate really good product managers from okay product managers. And some of that work is actually taste making, um, good and good enough decision making under conditions of high uncertainty, rallying everybody to a common cause, whether it's on a given feature or a given technical decision, or even a given product area or a strategic expansion. You need somebody or some set of people to like really rally everybody together. You also need people who are going to ask the right questions. I said this elsewhere, but like in a world of infinite answers, good questions really matter. And one of the core roles a PM or PM-like person should play is asking the right questions that cut through and find synthesis. Um, and so I think technological change with AI, especially, is going to automate away the low value portions of the PM role. Quite frankly, over the last 10 years, maybe 20 years, the PM role has become very formulaic. It's become very mechanized. It's become very processized. It's become less artisanal. And that has allowed the role to become much more professionalized, a much bigger role than it was 20 years ago. But it has come at the cost of people believing that you can do the job without taste and without decision making. And you can be successful at the job by being a great process master, or by being a great sprint person, or by being really good at kind of keeping the trains on time, or by being really good at program management. And all of those things are useful, but they're not the core things in the role. And so I think the core things have to reemerge and become that much more important. They always are. They have to become that much more important. And the good PMs are going to recognize that and they're going to adapt to it.
I want to move on to building and leading teams, which you've, of course, had a lot of experience with. What were some of the guiding principles when you were thinking about building your team and hiring on product managers?
Yeah. So I led lots of different teams over the years: product, engineering, design, marketing. But let's talk about product specifically. So I think there's a few principles as you try to build out a product team. So maybe the first one is do not be an empire builder. So it's a negative as opposed to a positive. And so the kind of really good PM leaders know that this is a leverage role. And so the more leverage you get from your team, the better. And what that means in practice is you want to have as few PMs as possible to achieve excellent outcomes for customers. You do not want to be the type of PM leader who just instinctively wants to add more PMs. You want to be the type of PM leader that says, how do I get as few great PMs as possible, and get as much leverage as I can get out of the PM team, but also the engineering, design, product marketing, data science teams that are around the PM, in order to maximize value for the customer. So I think that's one, which is, do not be the type of person that just wants more headcount. In fact, want as little headcount as possible. So that's one. Um, Two, is actually, do not fall. Again, I'm picking a negative. Do not fall for some of the mid commentary around PMs. PMs are the CEO of the product. Like, in my opinion, that's all bunk. So you are there, as I mean, and when Square was early, this is before me. Jack didn't want to have the role be called product manager. He wanted the role to be called product editor, and the title didn't stick for a variety of good reasons. But I think the underlying spirit is actually very valuable, because if you're a product manager, you are there to elevate engineering and design and product marketing and data science. You are there to help them be more creative. You are there to unblock them, and you are there to help them shine as much as possible. And so, don't be the type of person that tries to take decision making authority from engineering or design. In fact, help them, collectively get to a better decision outcome. And so, be the type of leader that's building a team that basically knows how to get decisions landed, but don't be the type of leader that wants to make all the decisions themselves, or don't hire people who want to do that. Don't hire people who are pretending to be CEOs. Like, that's not the role. So I think that's number two. Maybe number three, in the context of team building, is really kind of try to find leaders, that are going to elevate everybody around them. That's a version of what I just said. And so find people who elevate everybody around them, instead of not. A related point to that, maybe number three, I would say number three, number four is find people who know how to give credit freely. And so I think, if you want to play this PM influence infinite game, where you are in this game, if you will, with designers and engineers and marketers and data scientists, and you're playing this game over a period of many years, you want to resist, and it starts from the top and it goes every step of the leadership down to the IC level. You want to resist the temptation to, get credit early and often. You want credit, uh, kind of whatever the opposite of early and often is. And so, give credit freely to your designers, give credit freely to your engineers, and that actually helps you build influence over time. And so that has to be imbued from the top. And if the PM leader is viewed as somebody who's like credit taking and spotlight shining, and it works in the short term, it doesn't work in the long term.
I want to wrap up with one final question, and it's, do you have any advice for things that young product managers should be doing today to set themselves up for success, whether they want to be a product leader or maybe even a founder?
Yeah, there's a lot to say. So again, we're in this moment of like significant change, and that presents challenges and opportunities, just like any moment of significant change. So if you are an early career product manager, there's a few things I would say off the top of my head. First, don't worry. The role is going to be around in some form or fashion. Don't fall for the most hyperbolic commentary about how the role is going to be gone. That's not true. In fact, I've spent a lot of time with founders who are at the earliest stages, like AI native startups, and the conversation I'm having with them is around how they should hire their first PM. In fact, not how do I get rid of my PM. So don't worry. So that's first. Second, do recognize that and I said this previously, the process stuff, the mechanized stuff, the formulaic stuff, that's going away. And there is a very deep and very rich tendency, especially over the last 10 years, to fall back on that as the de facto way to believe that you are driving success. It was never true, and it's even more not true now. and even more so into the future. So the stuff that people just fill their days with, program management, writing emails, status updates, all that stuff is just, it's fine. It's important, but it's not the core. And so recognize that if you are doing what I would call pencil sharpening, I used to say this, like, don't pencil sharpen. It makes you feel busy in the moment, but it doesn't serve you. And so resist the urge to pencil sharpen, um, and figure out how to automate that away. Like, lean into the AI parts of this, adopt all the AI tools, figure out how to processize away, automate away all of the kind of low value labor that you can either jump on or you can be run over by the freight train that's coming. So lean into it, adopt all the tools, learn about it, and use it to automate away the low value stuff. Third is sit in the discomfort of not knowing how to do the high value stuff. So a lot of junior PMs, mid-career PMs, they're learning how to do product strategy, right? Um, it doesn't come easy. There's no substitute for reps and experience, but there's an inherent discomfort that a lot of people feel. Lean into that discomfort, sit with it, figure out how to get around it, figure out how to solve it. So sit with the discomfort. Don't, go back to just the pencil sharpening. So, but be willing to sit with the discomfort. And then maybe one more I would say, and I've said this before, which is maintain just a hyper innate sense of curiosity. So the worst conversations I've had with junior or mid career PMs is I will go ask them about some bleeding edge technology thing in their area, their domain, and they haven't heard about it. Like, that should never happen to you. You should be on the bleeding edge. If you're a junior person, you got to be on the bleeding edge way more so than your leaders. And so if you are a PM in any company, I hope that you are vibe coding. I hope that you are trying all the tools. I hope that you are working with your engineers to figure out what AI tools they are adopting. I hope you are pushing the people around you on prototyping tools. I hope you are saying, I'm not going to just write PRDs anymore. I'm going to produce prototypes on day one. So I hope you are doing those things, because if you do those things, by definition, you are going to be fine in this transformation. If you are not doing those things, start now.
Sounds like it's a really exciting time to be a product manager.
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of really great tools that product managers can be using
Yes.
to excel their career and make this role artisanal again.
Yes. 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 There's no substitute for taste, for judgment, for curiosity, for approaching the world with intellectual honesty, for finding signal in the noise. And at least as of today, there is a preeminent role for humans to do that. But it's hard.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation, and
Thank you.
thank you again for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you.